guys, so in this video we're going to be talking about how to start a farm from scratch. Now it doesn't really matter which kind of farm you want to start, as long as it's a farm. These are like fundamental basic principles that you actually need to implement for you to actually be successful in the long term on the farm. I'm talking this from a background of someone who has started multiple types of farms. So I've started a poultry farm, I've started a goat farm somewhere, I've also started a breeder farm with someone, and I've also helped multiple people start different types of farms, both crops and animals, and I've been successful in the farms that I have personally started. And I've also seen people start and fail, so I understand, where the failures come from. I understand the key things that are important in you succeeding as a farmer. So if you're that kind of person who wants to understand how to actually start a farm from scratch and actually be successful, then this is your kind of video. Now, before we get to the point of you actually starting a farm, it is also important for you to understand that you don't always need to start a farm. You must understand whether you actually need to start a farm, because you might be outside there and you're thinking you really need to start a farm, when in reality you don't need to start a farm. So I've actually made a video. This is the second video in this series. I've made a previous video for which I leave a link right here, for which I believe it's actually more important that you watch that video before you watch this video, because it will lay the background for you to continue and watch this video. Now, it's a really bright day right here at the farm, as you can see in the background, but we'll just ignore that and try to move on. Now, before I actually give you the details of how to start a farm from scratch, just a brief background from the previous video. The thing, or the key thing to pay attention to, is actually the sales and the marketing, yeah? Because that's the fundamental thing of anything. If you're starting out a farm and your goal is to do it as a hobby, then come on, forget about everything else in the past. You can start with this video, yeah? Because for you, it's not about making the money. But if you want to make money, then sales and marketing are very important, because everything else is pointless if you cannot sell. And the takeaway point from that video is that you must have figured out how to sell and who to sell to before you actually decide to start the farm, because at some point you might actually realize that maybe selling is your thing and starting and running a farm is not your thing, and you actually don't need to start and run a farm, and you can just go and buy the products from other people who do have farms and you just go and sell. That's the advantage of doing it that way. So if you actually go through the process that I mentioned in that video, then there are three things that you'll have figured out by the time you actually start to build your farm or decide to actually start a farm. These three things are: number one, what to sell. That's very key, because a lot of people go outside there and start farms with the goal of selling something when they should never have been selling that thing, because there's no one who is going to buy that thing. You understand? So it is very important that you understand what to sell, and what better way for you to understand what to sell than to first test it out in the market. So test it out in the market, first identify and see if people will actually buy the thing that you want to sell. Maybe the thing that you want to sell is actually a waste of time, and you actually have to find out something that you want to sell, something different. And when you do discover what you want to sell, then it becomes really easy. Then you can go ahead and start your farm when you're very confident that what you're going to sell will be bought. Second thing is who to sell it to. Yeah, so you want to decide, are you going to be selling it to poor people? Are you going to be selling it to rich people? Are you going to be selling it to the high-end market, to the low-end market? What prices are you actually going to be setting for the product that you're going to be selling? Very, very important. And then thirdly, where to place your farm. So if you've first of all discovered what to sell, number two, you've discovered who to sell it to, then it becomes really easy for you to know where to place your farm. Because if you're going to be selling vegetables, and then you want to sell vegetables to high-end customers, so customers who are going to be paying maybe $10 for a vegetable that costs $1, then you really need to make sure that you locate your farm a bit closer to those people. Most probably it's going to be an urban area. Yeah? You're not going to place your farm in a rural setting like me right here, because you'd have to transport the product 200 kilometers every day, because it's a vegetable, so you need to be harvesting almost every day for you to take it to the market or to the clients. You're not going to place it in a very far deep place, otherwise the transport costs alone will just not make sense for you. Yeah, so you need to identify where you're going to be placing the farm, and if you start by identifying the market, then 100% by the time you do start the farm, you will have identified where you're also going to be placing your farm. So then, if you have figured out these things, you've figured out the product, you've figured out who's going to buy the product, and you've figured out where you're going to place the farm, then you're going to have to go through these 4 steps for you to actually start and run the farm successfully. So we'll go through them. Step number 1 is learn how to produce the product that's going to meet the demand of the customers. Yeah, you already know the product. Maybe it is vegetables, maybe it is chicken eggs, maybe it is chickens, maybe it's goats. Yeah. Now you need to learn about how to make this product, how to raise this product. If you want to learn, you know, let's say vegetable growing, maybe tomato growing, then you're going to have to go through the steps that you're required to go through to understand how to grow vegetables. And how do you go through these steps? Going through these steps requires you to do these 3 steps. Yeah. Now you might not be able to implement all the 3 steps based on where you are, but it would be best for you to implement these 3 steps. First step is learn theoretically how to implement these steps. So you want to grow vegetables, you want to start a poultry farm. Let's use poultry farming, yeah, because this is what I'm doing. So you want to start a poultry farm. Then you have to gather as much information as possible about starting a poultry farm as possible. So go on the internet. I mean, I've placed a lot of YouTube videos about how to start and build a poultry farm here on my YouTube channel. Just watch as many of the videos as possible. Maybe they're not exclusive. Then you need to go into the Farm Up Academy, for example, because I've personally built a course. It's called the Farm Up Academy, where I train people how to start and build a profitable poultry farm. Anything that makes you anything from 5,000 to 15,000 US dollars a month, and even above. Because if the principal can work for 5,000, trust me, it will work for $5 million. Yeah. So go inside there, subscribe to the Farm Up Academy. Of course, you're going to pay some dollars, or some money. So you go inside there, get the knowledge, learn as much as possible, go through the classes, carry out some of the exercises that are given inside there. Just learn as much as possible. Sometimes you download books. Yeah, that's the first step when it does come to learning. Second of all, watch someone do it. Yeah. So after you've learned and you've gotten as much information as possible about something, the next step ideally would be to watch someone do it. Now, this is a little bit more complicated or a little bit harder to do depending on the type of setting you're in. It's easier, for example, when it does come to crops like growing tomatoes. It's easier if you're doing goat farming. It's easier if you're doing cattle farming. It's a bit more complicated when it does come to poultry and piggery, because farmers who deal in poultry and piggery are very, very hesitant with allowing people to come over to their farms. Yeah, so you might probably have to go to a demonstration farm somewhere or something like that, so that you can watch someone actually carry out these activities. Again, it can also have a bit of a limitation, again, when it does come to particular things. Because, for example, for you to watch someone start and manage a poultry farm, it's going to take you a lot of time. So maybe carry out an internship in that place or something like that. So based on your working schedule or something like that, it might be difficult. But that would be the ideal thing. If you have a child, a son, who you think might help you run the business, a sister, someone who is doing nothing, send them over to someone's farm. Let them train over there. Again, that's not something I personally do on the farm, because I consider that the risk is not worth it. But if there's someone else who can let you do it, whether it's tomato growing, whether it is growing cabbages, growing spinach, go over there, see how they spray. How do they do everything that you have learned about in classes? Once you do that, then the third step would be for you to actually carry out these things while being supervised by the person who has taught you. Yeah. So you've gone to someone's farm, they have showed you how to mix poultry feed, then mix the poultry feed alone. By the time you get done with these 3 steps, then you should be able, you should be knowledgeable enough to actually go and implement it alone on your farm, or practice it alone on your farm. Yeah. So again, if you want to join the Farm Up Academy, you want to start and build a profitable poultry farm, I've made a very good course. I have quite a number of students inside there, and a lot of them have actually started farms. The farms are doing well. I'll leave a link in the description of this video about how to join the Farm Up Academy. Just go and check it out. Really, really beautiful thing. Now, after you've gotten all the information you need, then the next step would be to get money to start the farm. Now, I'm really hoping that this is something that you've been working on, considering you've carried out the very first step, which was, doing the sales and everything. You've probably been getting money from your previous business, or you've been saving up, whichever way that you've decided to get money. I'm hoping that, you've actually been thinking about it, yeah? So get enough money to help you start a poultry farm. I've actually made a video on this channel about how much it would cost you to start a poultry farm. I'll leave a link to that video right here. But, depending on the kind of farming that you want to do, this might vary. So you need to go outside there. Visit some farmers, let them give you breakdowns of how much it would cost to start whichever kind of farm, and utilize that information. Now, the third thing is to actually decide on how big to start. This is very critical, because considering you've actually already started and you've tested the market, it's very easy for you to get tempted to go too big. Very, very easy. The one thing that I also want you to understand is that the practical aspect of actually starting and running a farm is very different from the theoretical aspect. The reading that you've been doing, the learning that you've been doing, it's quite different, yeah? And selling has its own technicalities. I'm not going to say that it's easier, but it has its own technicalities that are quite different from producing. Yeah. So whilst you might have been a very good seller, you might not be very good at producing the product. And you need to develop the expertise, the experience that it requires for you to actually produce that product before you can actually scale up. So my advice to you is that in starting up, start with either number one, just enough product to meet the market demand. So don't be there telling yourself, hey, I've been able to sell 50 trays of eggs every day. So, I mean, if I could sell 50 trays of eggs every day, I think I can sell 80, I can sell 100, yeah? I would advise that you've been selling 50, start with 50, yeah? Start with 50. Produce or start raising your farm in such a way that you're going to be producing 50 trays of eggs every day. That's going to save you from a lot of chaos in the future, yeah? Or start with what's just enough for you to handle, yeah? So you've probably considered how much money you have available to you, yeah? You start with what you can afford. Don't start with what you can't afford. So again, we go back to the subject of taking a loan, yeah? I know that you've gone through the selling, yeah? Again, you know how to sell, you know what the demand is on the market, and you're thinking to yourself, well, there's just enough demand on the market, yeah? So why not produce the maximum that I can produce? So I don't have the money, how about I take a loan? I'm safe, yeah? I know that there is demand. Remember that you've, yes, secured one form of safety, which is in terms of the market, but there are other forms of safety you actually haven't secured. What are those other forms of safety? Number one, the technicality of managing the farm, yeah? I mean, managing the workers on the farm, raising the animals, dealing with diseases on the farm, all those other things you actually haven't gone through. And the only way you can be certain that the farm will actually be successful is if you've gone through it at least once. So again, I don't consider it wise for someone to take a loan to start a farm, despite the fact that you've sold and you know what the demand is, you're very certain that you'll be able to sell all the product. I wouldn't advise you to, take a loan to start out the farm. I wouldn't advise you. So start with just what's enough for you to handle in terms of, your pocket. And then later on, once the farm has started producing and you're sure you've mastered it, of course you've already mastered how to sell, but now you've also mastered how to produce, then it makes more sense, way, way more sense for you to go outside there, take that loan, expand the farm, grow the farm. I mean, the risk is still there, but it's much, much lower than before you actually get all this expertise with starting and running and managing the farm. And then finally, step number 4 is actually paying emphasis to meeting the customer needs or the customer desires. It's very easy, very, very easy for you to get blown away, yeah? It's very easy for you to get carried away in terms of meeting your desires, in terms of you meeting your dreams, the things you've always dreamt about, without thinking about the customer, yeah? So you could sit down there and you're like, whoa, okay, I've now figured out how to raise chickens. And I see that in other countries, they produce white-shelled eggs. How about I just start producing chickens or raising chickens that produce white-shelled eggs? Who the hell told you that the market needs white-shelled eggs? Who? Yeah? So it's very, very important that you understand how to actually, raise the chickens and manage the chickens, but also for you to understand that which kind of chickens does the market need? Yeah, which kind of chickens does the customer need? What size of eggs do they need? At what time do they need the eggs delivered? Yeah. In the end, what I'm trying to tell you is that the key thing to focus on is that always have the customer in mind. Yeah. Never think about yourself. Never think about what you can get out of this or anything. Always consider the customer first. Again, customer is always first. The customer is the main deal. They're always the big deal. And even when you're starting your farm, that's going to be the end goal. Yeah? It's all about serving the customer. It's nothing to do with you. It's all about serving the customer. So always consider them first. Yeah. Now, I hope you guys have actually enjoyed the video. I've tried to share what I consider the core basic principles. Sorry, the lighting keeps changing because it keeps getting cloudy and very bright. But I've tried to share the things that I consider core and very important when it does come to the management of the farm. And these will work in any field. It doesn't matter whether you're doing crops, whether you're doing animals, whether it's chickens, whether it's cattle, whether it's pigs, whether it's vegetables, these principles will work. If you implement them, you're actually going to be successful and you're going to smile all the way to the bank. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, smash the notification bell. Catch you very soon with another video. Lots of love. Bye-bye.